Hi guys, good morning. It's time for part 2 of our Jackanory session, George's Marvellous Medicine. You remember yesterday we met Grandma and she was a particularly vicious character who was making George's life a misery, sending him backwards and forwards to the kitchen and telling him all kinds of different gruesome tales about insects and how to eat them and how to put them in sandwiches and the like. It was quite disgusting. Well, I hope you're all okay and well. Here's part 2, and you'll notice we've come into a place you don't always see because we're in the staff room today and we're in the kitchen area of the staff room in school. This is because part of our story today moves into the kitchen area, so I thought I'd use our area like a little theatre so we're in the right scene for the right time. Here goes, let's pick up from where we left off. I'll read the last few words of yesterday's Jackanory first. You find all sorts of creepy crawlies and nice things in sticks of raw celery, the old woman went on. Sometimes it's earwigs. I don't want to hear about earwigs, cried George. Now those were the last lines from yesterday. Let's carry on from there. A big fat earwig is very tasty, Grandma said. Licking her lips. But you've got to be very quick, my dear. When you put one of those in your mouth, it has a pair of sharp nippers on its back end. And if it grabs your tongue with those, it never lets go. So you've got to bite the earwig first, chop chop, before it bites you. George started edging towards the door. He wanted to get as far away as possible from the filthy old woman. You're trying to get away from me, aren't you? She said, pointing a bent finger straight at George's face. You're trying to get away from your grandma. Little George stood by the door, staring at the old hag in the chair. She stared back at him. Could it be, George wondered, that she was a witch? He'd always thought about witches being in fairy tales, but now he wasn't so sure. Come closer to me, little boy, she said, beckoning to him with that horny bent finger. Come closer to me and I will tell you secrets. George didn't move, but Grandma didn't move either. I know a great many secrets, she said. And suddenly she smiled, and it was one of those thin, icy smiles, the kind a snake might make just before it bites you. Come over here to Grandma and she'll whisper secrets to you. George took another step backwards, edging again closer to the door. Now you mustn't be frightened of your old grandma, she said, smiling that icy smile that she'd used before. George again stepped further back towards the door. Some of us, she said, and all at once she was leaning forward in her chair and whispering in a throaty sort of voice that George had never heard her use before. Some of us, she said, have magic powers that can twist the creatures of this earth into wondrous shapes. A tingle of electricity flashed down the length of George's spine. He began to feel quite frightened at this point. Who was this grandma? Some of us, the old woman went on, have fire on our tongues and sparks in our bellies and wizardry in the tips of our fingers. Some of us know secrets that would make your hair stand on end and your eyes pop out of their sockets. George wanted to run away, but his feet just seemed stuck to the floor. We know how to make your nails drop off and your teeth grow out of your fingers instead. George began to tremble. It was her face that frightened him most of all, the frosty smile, those brilliant, unblinking eyes. We know how to have you wake up in the morning with a long tail coming out from behind you. Grandma, he said, stop no more. We know secrets, my dear, about dark places with dark things where they live and squirm and slither all over each other. George had heard enough. He made a dive for the door. He could hear Grandma saying, "It doesn't matter how far you run," he heard her say. "You won't ever get away." George ran into the kitchen, slamming the door behind him. Chapter 2. It's called The Marvellous Plan, and it picks up with George now in the kitchen. George sat himself down at the table in the kitchen. He was shaking a little. Oh, how he hated Grandma. He really hated that horrid old witchy woman. And all of a sudden, he had a tremendous urge to do something about her. Something whopping. Something absolutely terrific. A real shocker. A sort of explosion. He wanted to blow away the witchy smell that hung about her in the next room. I mean, he may have been only 8 years old, but he was a brave little boy. He was ready to take this old woman on. "I'm not going to be frightened by her," he stated. But he was a bit frightened right now. And that's why he wanted to suddenly explode her away. Well, not quite away, but he did want to shake the old woman up quite a bit. Very well then. What should it be? This whopping, terrific, exploding shocker for Grandma. He would have liked to have put a firework banger under her chair, but he didn't have one of those. He would like to have put a long green snake down the back of her dress. He didn't have a long green snake. He'd like to put 6 big black rats in the room with her and lock the door. He didn't have 6 big black rats. As George sat there pondering this interesting problem, his eye fell upon the bottle of Grandma's brown medicine standing on the sideboard. Rotten stuff it seemed to be. 4 times a day a large spoonful of it was shovelled into her mouth, and it didn't do her the slightest bit of good. She was always just as horrid after she'd been before. The whole point of medicine surely was to make someone better. And if it didn't do that, then it was quite useless in George's view. So, thought George suddenly, "Ha ha! Ho hum! I know exactly what I'm going to do. I shall make her a new medicine. One that is so strong, so fierce, so fantastic it will either cure her completely or blow the top of her head off. I'll make her a magic medicine. A medicine no doctor in the world has ever made before." George looked at the kitchen clock. It said 10:05. There was nearly an hour left before Grandma's next dose of the medicine was due at 11 o'clock. "Here we go then," cried George, jumping up from the table. "A magic medicine it will be." He went looking through the cupboards for items. "So, give me a bug and a jumping flea. Give me 2 snails and lizards 3. And a slimy squiggler from the sea. And the poisonous sting of a bumblebee. And the juice from the fruit of the jujube tree. And the powdered bone of a wombat's knee. And 100 other things as well. each with a nasty smell. I'll stir them up, I'll boil them long. A mixture tough and it'll be a mixture strong. And then, hi-ho and down it goes, a nice big spoonful. Hold your nose. Just gulp it down and have no fear. How do you like it, Granny dear? Will she go pop? Will she explode? Will she go flying off down the road? Will she go puff in a puff of smoke? Start fizzing up like a can of Coke? Who knows? Not I. Let's wait and see. I'm glad it's neither you or me. Oh, Grandma, if you only knew what I have got in store for you. I'm going to leave it there, guys, for today, because that's the end of chapter 2. George looks like he's got a plot and a medicine in mind, and he's busy thinking about how to put it together. Remember, this is all just a bit of fun and a classic story from Roald Dahl, not something you could try really, but I'm for sure very excited by what's going to happen next. Will George's plan work? Will it change Grandma? Will it make any difference, or will it all backfire on George himself? Stay tuned tomorrow, same time, same place, and we'll find out how George begins to make the medicine. Stay safe, miss you all, see you soon.